Hey, everybody. Before we hop into this next episode, I believe this will be part 3 with the legendary Chief Lampe. Want to talk to you about your caffeine intake, be it cardomax.com. Use the promo code One's Ready. They've got a bunch of caffeine to get you going. You can right in the vein if you want. Not really, you can't do that.
Baby.
But
you should
you
not
can't
do that.
No, you should not do that. But they come in little packets and they've got hydration as well, and immunity booster and that kind of stuff. But, on the go caffeine, you can take it straight, but, you better have a chaser afterwards because it's going to get your mind right. But, if anything, you just throw it in some water or throw it in some Sprite or something like that. If you really, are so inclined and you can get going, it tastes great. I throw it in almost, not the caffeine one. I don't throw it in every thing I drink, but every time I get some water, I'm either throwing in some hydration or some energy. So check them out. Cardomax.com, promo code One's Ready. And then what do you think about that Eberly stock, Aaron?
I love it. I want to hit Cardomax. They just came out with Max Clarity. Max Clarity is their take on a nootropic. So if you guys don't know what a nootropic is, it helps your brain focus, right? So if you're actually just trying to support like brain health and stuff, check out Cardomax for that new nootropic. That was the big thing that I wanted to put out there for Cardomax. Nice. So go check them out. Man, Eberly stock, I cannot wait. So there may be some collabos on the future between us and the boys out at boys and girls out at Eberly stock. So man, I love their entire line of technical gear. I have some piece of Eberly stock clothing or some bag near me pretty much all times during my day, whether it's the bando bag, whether it's one of the switchblades. They have bags that you can carry any weapon you want concealed. They're made specifically for making sure that you have a functional bag that you can also have your Second Amendment rights, have that right to bear arms. And of course, legally, for legal reasons, I'm telling you to do this in conjunction with your local laws and regulations. But Eberly stock is awesome, man. Their full line of all the way up to like, if you're trying to go out on a hunt in Alaska to just day to day, wear and tear, walking around any city of your choosing, man, they got everything for you in between. So from jackets to pants to bags to anything that you could possibly need, training rucks, everything. So go check out eberlystock.com. Use the code we are OR10.
OR10.
Yeah, OR10 over at Eberly stock. So go check them out. They're great Americans out of Boise, Idaho. And I said that one correct this time, so I don't get yelled at. But go check out eberlystock.com. Use our code OR10 at checkout for a sweet discount. Anything that you need from walking around to a backcountry hike. So awesome times. Good folks over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And then now enjoy this next episode with Chief Mike Lampe. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the One's Ready podcast. You're in the team room, and we are back for round 3 with the legendary Chief Lampe. Appreciate you joining us today, Chief.
My pleasure, gentlemen. And as we were speaking before we went to record, I'll try to pick up where we left off on the last session. And I think I used the terms that Colonel Beckwith wanted eyes on target on the desert lake bed that the intel folks had said was suitable for C-130 landing. So Coach Carney was the chosen one, as I said previously. It's my understanding they took him out of the Air Force for this operation. So he was Joe Civilian for this operation and tied in with the agency guys. And then they flew him in on a Twin Otter. He had a penetrometer and a small mini bike. And so he went in there and planted 4 what I call beanbag lights that the agency Geek Squad had developed. And they had little pop-up antennas on it, and they could be activated by this transmitter that was put on the lead C-130 and could activate those lights, I think, if I recall, when we were testing them down around Fort Stewart, about 10 miles out. So a good final approach. Coach went ahead and did that op. Came back, and I think I had mentioned Mitch Bryan, actually were attached to B Squadron for another option. And we launched out of Fort Bragg, jumped into Yuma, and then we were doing cross country work, from point A to point B, C at night with bikes, M151s, mules, etc. And when we went to ground, when daylight's coming up, and I'm sorry if I repeated myself, once we started bedding down, we had this Huey helicopter flying in the area, in the general area where we had bedded down. And then the Delta team leader, which I think was Eldon Bardwell, elected, okay, let's step out and show ourselves and see what's going on. The Huey landed. The Delta guys went over and spoke that. Then Bardwell, I think, came back with the sergeant major and said, we got to pack up and go back to Yuma Naval Air Station and go back to Bragg. Didn't give any explanation why, what for. So we took the shortest route, got to Yuma Naval Air Station, and climbed on a 141, went back to Bragg, went into Yellow Ramp. Of course, Mitch and I still had another 5-hour drive back to Charleston. So we hit the road. And when we got back, we got met with Coach Carney. Coach Carney said, looks like we're going to deploy overseas, and it's a good possibility this op is going to go. And so he told the group, and I think it was myself, Mitch Bryan, John Corn, Bud Gonzalez, Dick West, and we were also taking Doug Coheed, Doug Phillips, and Bill Sink for which would have been the second night of airfield seizure. And so we were briefed to go home, get things squared away, tell your wives you're going on a scuba proficiency trip to Key Largo.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah,
absolutely. Good cover. Listen, honey, don't worry about me. I'm just going to be in the Keys a couple days, in and out. Going to be eating some conch fritters down on Key Largo. Might go over to Boca Chica. No big deal.
Yep. Have a pina colada or two, you name it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we climb on the 141 comes in, and this 141 has the motorcycle that Colonel Beckworth or Delta had promised that we would get a motorcycle for the op. So that was there. And I think we flew from Charleston to Rhine Mine, and then we had to offload our stuff in the motorcycle and hold out in the aerial port area with our motorcycle. And, and of course, all the airmen in there working or looking at us, what the hell are you guys doing here? What are you dressed up for? That's a nice looking motorcycle, yeah. Great cover, right? And then we loaded on another 141, and we launched and ended up in Watakini. And we were there, I want to say a day or two. We're bunked out in tents. And I think it was there, and it may have been Missouri, but I think it was Watakini, that the coach came back from a briefing or a meeting and told us that, everything's looking like it's a go, but instead of just running one runway where he had put the box in one end, we're actually going to do parallel ops. And if you kind of look at the map of the Desert One area, there was kind of I guess we'll just say a road that ran through there. It wasn't paved, but it was was well used. And so on the other side of that road, in other words, the lake bed expanded. And the assumption was, well, if you can, the penetrometer and everything that you saw on what I call the south end of this desert lake bed was suitable for C-130, then the assumption was the north end across the road would be suitable. So now, from all the rehearsals that we done, we never did parallel, dirt runway strip landings, and so now we're going through the adjustments, who is going to do what, et cetera. And then I think we load up and we go to Missouri. And again, we still don't necessarily have the green light, but we are positioning, getting, ramped up more and more. And then we finally get the word when we're in Missouri, it's a go. And yes, we're going to do parallel ops. And then myself and JK and Bud Gonzalez had the responsibility of sorting out the northern portion of the lake bed and establish another box and one to run the parallel ops. And then we started practicing. Now, Mitch and I had got training on the motorcycle, when we were gearing up with, I think it was B Squadron going out to Yuma. But the other guys, JK, Dick West, and then Rex Wallman joined us, hadn't had a chance to, ride the motorcycle. And so they started doing some training, and Mitch and I refreshed ourselves at night, obviously. And during a lot of our rehearsals, we never had NVGs. And so this was the first time, I think, for a lot of guys to start adjusting to the PVS 5s. And so that's what we were doing in Missouri in the evening, obviously talking about the op. And then it comes, get a message, President Carter approved to go forward. Coach Carney comes back from a briefing. And if you recall the incident I mentioned previously where Mitch and I kind of got bumped off the one op to put more shooters on, well, that scenario came back up. And so I could see, by the looks of Coach and JK and I are looking at each other, hey, Coach not necessarily looking like a happy camper. That Irish blood is flowing. And the coach looks at all and says, get your stuff, and you go over to that aircraft and you sit on that ramp and you don't let anybody displace you or remove you from that aircraft. I'm going to take care of this. And there was a move afoot that they wanted to bump a few of us off so they could put more shooters on the aircraft. So the coach went back. I don't know what he said or what he did, but in the end, we didn't get bumped, and we sat on the ramp until it was launch time. And then during that time frame, right before we left, we didn't have inter-team radios. So Delta had brought over a box of MX 360s, which was the radio the shooters, the operators were used. And I think there was like 8 or 9 in there with spare parts. And for me, and I guess for all of us, we'd never worked with an MX 360. So we're looking at it, like a pig looking at a wristwatch. Okay, let's figure out how this thing works, and figuring out what frequency the Delta guys are going to be on. So we're not, interfering with each other. We got that sorted out, and then we launched. And this is, a lot of people probably don't know this. It may be in one of the books. It may be in Guts to Try. Coach may have covered it at No Room for Error. And then there's another book that recently came out, Phoenix Rising, by Colonel Keith Nightingale, who was part of General Vaught's staff and did a lot of horrendous work up at the Pentagon and going out to the different locations. It's a good read. And as we launched, and we're going, I think they called it feet dry. In other words, we're entering Iranian airspace. and then we get hit by the haboo. And I think we're flying at that time about 500 feet, above ground. And you're in the haboo, and it's like sandpaper, like somebody's just, rubbing sandpaper on the skin of the aircraft. And as we entered, if I remember correctly, something broke loose outside the aircraft, and I think it was possibly the HF antenna. So now this thing is beating on the side of the aircraft as we're flying through the haboo. And I think it was the loadmasters, Taco Sanchez and Duke Wiley. If I remember, jerry rigged something. They opened up the ramp and was able to hook this cable that was, beaten on the side of the aircraft, and brought that in and closed the tailgate, and we pressed on. Now, Coach and Mitch Bryan are up in the, flight deck. And, Coach had experienced this haboo phenomena when he went in on the Twin Otter with the agency pilots. And I think the primary pilot was Bud McBroom, I think, had been flying in the Middle East, and they're flying low, and then boom. But the haboo's got a ceiling, and normally I guess it's about 1,500 feet. And if I recall the briefing, radar coverage didn't start till 2,000 feet and above. So Coach told the MC crew, "Hey, just kind of climb up the 1,500 feet, and you should get out of the haboo. You'll be above the cloud." And in fact,
simple. Makes sense. Yeah,
well,
just super easy. In the middle of a dust storm that you can't see your hand in front of your face with no HF antenna, the only thing you should have to do, to avoid getting shot down by Iranian counter air is just be right underneath the radar, just about 1,500. Yeah, that's pretty simple. Yeah. I thought this, Chief, I thought this was going to be an op that was, tough or had some sort of barriers that you guys had to overcome. It sounds like it's going great.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake,
Cakewalk. Yeah, this dive trip to Key Largo is turning out great for the boys.
Yeah, exactly. I was looking for that pina colada, though. And so, we proceed on in, and what it was is the first bird that we were on left an hour prior to all the other birds launching, with Delta and the fuel, et cetera. Obviously, we're given an hour to go in, reassess things, establish what I'll call the northern runway, make some adjustments to the box of one, get the TACAN set up, all those things. So we're coming in, and I think we're hitting final approach. So we're about 10 miles out. And, things are, as far as I know, I'm in the back on the tail end of the aircraft. And the next thing we know, instead of being on a final approach, all of a sudden, I think we're making a right-hand turn. We're going out. We're doing a go-around. And what happened was there was a vehicle that, as they were coming in, they just initiated the beanbag lights. And then all of a sudden, coming down, I think would have been from the western side where this road comes into the lake bed, some vehicles buzzing down there. So we had to do a go around. They shut off the lights, and then we come back around, do another approach. Well, now we're about 10 minutes behind schedule from where we were supposed to land. So for us, and what we had to do, the clock's ticking. We just lost 10 plus minutes. So in we go. We hit like a ton of shit, but it was a firm landing, And,
good.
And if I recall, little damage was done to the left landing, gear, the wheels, but nothing that would stop the. So, the ramp goes down. We're getting ready to offload. And guess what? All of a sudden, here's a bus. There's a bus coming in, flashing lights. And, don't hold me. I think he was honking his horn. What the hell are you doing out here in my space? And next thing I know, either Ranger or a Delta guy, shot the tires. They seized the bus. Now, all of a sudden, we have 47, I think it was, Iranians on a bus in the middle of the Yep. The desert. That this is supposed to be, what do you say, clandestine, covert op?
And Chief, this is like not just in like, hey, it's just outside the city. This is like
It's out
the
in
geography
boondocks.
of it. This is in the middle of nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yeah. And to come to find out, this was kind of the route that I don't know, taking shortcuts or smugglers or whatever the case may be. But it was, and so now, Mitch, Mitch and Coach, they go on up and set up the CP up where the aircraft are going to be parked for refueling. Dick West, Rex Wallman get the TAC in and get that position and up and running. They do some repositioning of the box that the coach put in. And then myself and JK and Bud, we've got to basically establish, another box and one. And you got to imagine that there's no point of reference. A lot of times you're doing airfield seizures and you got an actual runway to use. And so once Dick and Rex got their box kind of repositioned, we were able to take a compass heading off that corner light to determine where our corner light was on the other side so that, they actually looked parallel. But as you can imagine, the Habu had went through a portion of this lake bed, and, we're trudging through, 3-4 inches of, sand or dust.
Yep.
And so the visibility was just dog doo-doo. You got the C-130 engines running. So we're kind of creating our own Habu, with this, and so what we had to do is just, we did kind of a leapfrog. We took a 90-degree heading from the first light, and, you went as far as you could. And then, we leapfrog, another guy kept the heading. And finally, that's how we established the box one and what we'll consider less than, ideal conditions. And and then as we're doing that, the next action that happens, the Ranger blocking team, and I think Wade Ishimoto, out of Delta was leading this Ranger blocking. They had went up as far as they could on this road to set up a blocking position to prevent any more traffic if it happened to come up. So as they were getting established up at their AO to set up spikes and all that, all of a sudden, here comes a fuel truck, rump, boom. And, this thing ain't stopping. Excuse me for my poor English. And so they, so they start lighting it up, and things not stopping. The next thing, I think one of the Rangers pulled out a law and shot it. And all of a sudden, boom, and so this almost, the truck now is almost, it's quite a ways out there, but it's on center line for our runway. And it just lights up the whole damn desert. So there we got a bus with flat tires, with 47 Iranians. And now we got a fuel truck burning on center line of the second runway.
You got a C-130 kicking up moon dust, so it looks like there's an entire bomb going on. You can see this thing from space.
Tail.
Yeah, there's only three things that can be seen from space: this event, the Chinese Great Wall, and the pyramids. You guys really know how to make an entrance.
But you got a point of reference now, though, so that's good.
Right.
That's it. That's the benefit. Yeah, everybody call contact on the huge event in the middle of the desert and 47 Iranians.
And so, we went in, okay, let Ish and his crew deal with the burning thing. And then I can't recall who got assigned to babysit the 47 Iranians and the bus to get it out of the way. And we went and pressed on, doing what we needed to do, identified the location that we're going to put the inverted Y in to bring the helicopters in. After we landed started landing the C-130s. So again, we were able to make our timeline just by lickety split because we lost so much time. And then the other thing, dealing with this soft stand versus what we had been dealing with hard lake beds or hard surface runways, delayed, pushed back our timing, but we got it done. And then the birds started coming in. We got the birds positioned properly, and the FARP got rolled out. Now, something that we didn't know, or we found out just before I think we departed Missouri, is we had been working with a certain amount of distance in the refueling from the tail of the 130, and the hoses I think were 50-foot increments, and there was a decision to increase the pumping capacity was to take a 50-foot section out, and that really crimped what we had planned. All of a sudden you lose 50 feet and you're trying to bring in a RH-53, now you're 50 feet closer to the C-130, which is also creating its own boo.
Right. Well, and this is Chief, this is something, it's a nuance for some of our listeners. All right, everybody, I'm going to get really, really technical here. The 53 has a huge spinny choppy thing, and the C-130, the skin on a C-130 ain't that thick. So when you put the spinny choppy thing attached to a huge engine 50 feet closer and you're refueling, now gas is flammable, okay? So you can see where we're starting to have a little bit of an issue. You can't see the C-130 is kicking up dust, the 53 is kicking up dust, and now you guys are getting 50 feet closer. What was the decision for the 50-foot move? Was it to save on hose weight, or what was the deal with making it 50 feet closer?
To increase the pump capacity.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, sorry, I missed that earlier. Yeah, pump capacity. Well, and goodness gracious.
I mean, obviously, from their perspective, it was the right decision. It'd been nice to know from our decision, that
would have been a good heads up. Yeah. Oh, hey guys, we're 50 feet closer. We forgot to mention that. Oh, cool.
Yep. And so Mitch, John, and I, adjusted, as did Boom. But you talk about a pucker factor, bringing in that 53, closer to the C-130, just to be able to, for the FARP team to hook in. You're for lack of term, you're kind of saying your prayers a little bit. Oh my God, boom. Okay, got it. Now, once we got all the 130s on the ground, we put out the inverted Y. And as you probably, for your readings and stuff, the 53s ran into the same haboo. And, they were flying at 500 feet. And it's my understanding that they didn't have the same intel, or didn't get the intel, the fact that they could have picked up out of the haboo and flown above the cloud on it. But, they had to deal with that. And then during the flight, they got separated, is my understanding, and they set down. And if I recall, we started out with 8 R-53 helicopters. And they set down, and then, if I recall, one broke en route, and then one decided to return to the Nimitz. So that left 6, and that 6 53s was the minimum that Delta needed, to get to the hide site. And then obviously they were late. And I remember Bucky Burris coming down, where Bud and I were at the inverted Y, asking, have you heard anything from the 53s? Because we're running out of, darkness. There was, the timeline had been pushed so much that there wasn't a lot of wiggle room, try to get everything covered under darkness. And I told Bucky, no, not yet. Hopefully, something. And then I, got a hold of Dick West. Hey, is the TACAN actually running? Because that was a key thing for the 53s to hone in on. Everything was operational on our end, and then the next thing we know, the first 53 shows up, in the inverted Y. And as you know, from your guys' experience, that 53's got 90 knots of downwash when it's coming in and landing. So you just kind of imagine, hey, we're trying to marshal him in, and by the time he's coming in, we can't see him, he can't see us. We just, step aside, boom, he lands, throttles down. And, from the inverted Y up to where the refueling point is a fair distance. I can't recall what the distance was, but now you got the soft sand that's there that, they kind of taxi like an aircraft, in that nose wheel. And so they were kind of what I call hopping, up to the refueling point. They weren't big, wasn't a smooth taxi down the runway or on the carrier deck. They were hopping like a bunny rabbit to get there. So refueling, starts. The last helicopter comes into the Y, and this is the one that had some type of mechanical problem or hydraulic problem that the pilot and the flight lead for the helicopter said can't fly it, can't go. So now we're down to 5 helicopters. The crew says this thing won't fly, so we can't take a chance to put a portion of the Delta Force on to go to the hide site that may not make it to the hide site, etc. So now the decision comes down. Okay, scrubbing the mission. We're going to load up everybody. We're going to fly back. The helicopters will, get topped off and fly back to the Nimitz, as I understand. And I think the broke helicopter they were going to pick up and put out far out in the desert. And I'm not sure what the decision was going to be, reference the 47 Iranians that were still sitting on the bus as our guest.
I always forget that these 47 Iranians are just sitting there. Like
they're in the middle of the dark.
In the middle of the dark. Like, imagine being a guy that, like, I imagine like somebody here is completely and totally unaware of what's going on. He's like, I'm just trying to get to work, man. Like, I'm going to be late for my job, and I'm playing around with these Americans in the middle of this desert.
Yep. And my understanding, there was one Iranian that spoke pretty good English, and he was, I bet, a bit of a wise ass to whoever was at the babysitting duties. And I'd heard that there was a discussion, and I don't know if it's true or not, that they were going to take the 47 Iranians and we're going to fly them back to Missouri with us, and maybe do a hostage trade. And don't hold me to that. I just heard that. And so we're doing all the top off on the helicopters, and the one helicopter over there, Lewis's bird, they pretty much had no more fuel to give this helicopter to top it off to go back to the Nimitz. And there was still fuel on one of the other 130s on the other side, on the original LZ. So, Mitch Bryan, gave that helicopter instructions to pick up and, relocate over to the other side to the, I can't remember which C-130 on that side had the fuel. I think Bud Gonzalez was down, kind of where the helicopter was going to pick up, just as a point of reference. And as you can imagine, as soon as that helicopter picked up, we're in brownout conditions. And I can't speak for the air crew, but I'm assuming they lost spatial, acuity to where they were in relation to the 130. They really didn't have a good point of reference as they were picking up. And, the next thing is that helicopter crashed into that C-130 and pretty much crashed, sealed off, the firewall for the 130. So the MC, the crew up there really had no chance in hell. And then obviously the helicopter crew was in the same boat. When that fireball exploded, it sealed off, if I recall, it would have been, I think, the left side of the C-130. In other words, the flames, boom. So exiting out the crew cargo door or that parachute door was a no-go. And, when the crash took place, I think the ability to lower the ramp also, was taken out of the option. So you had the right parachute door left. And all you could see, from my position was, we had just loaded up, I think 40 or 50 Delta operators on that bird. And you remember, it's got one of those 5,000, I think it was 5,000, gallon, blivets, that was pretty much sucked dry, but you still had, some fuel. It's like walking on, a sponge per se. And you got to credit the Delta guys, for their discipline. The air crew, the load masters back there that were thinking. In other words, I think they initially lifted up the other parachute door, but immediately had to shut that down. Obviously, the fire in there, and next thing you do is the Delta operators are just exiting, boom, 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 jumping into the sand, rolling, and thank God, they all got out. And then I think one Delta operator went back and pulled out the radio operator that was up next to the firewall, who had been, severely burned, and got him out. And the next thing, now we're, going to a whole different plant. We now have lost one C-130. We've lost a 53. We got a broke 53. We got a bus full of Iranians. We got a fuel truck burning at the approach end. And now, okay, we're going to leave all the helicopters here. We're just going to police up the crews and all the Delta. And the next thing we're doing, and the Rangers had already loaded up their gun jeeps on, certain aircraft. Next thing we're doing is we're offloading anything that wasn't tied down to the C-130. The gun jeeps were coming off, the motorcycle, you name it. If it wasn't tied down, you're trying to lessen the weight of the 130 because there was no plan initially that you're going to bring, take off out in the desert with your whole force. And now you're down actually 2 C-130s because the second C-130 came in that offloaded cargo nets and everything else. We had launched it back out because it was going to be, I think, one of the leads for the next night. So it needed to get back. So now we're down 2 C-130s, and we've got all the helicopter crew to deal with, plus everybody that was brought in on all those 130s. And so you had to lighten the load, and then the DACO procedures, trying to figure out where everybody was. And, well, and that, I mean, myself and Dick West, JK, we went everywhere we could on the desert floor to make sure that everybody was accounted for to the best of our ability. We didn't have a list or how many Delta operators, air crews. We're just looking, is there anybody out here wandering around the desert, trying to figure out, where to go next. And
just a random Iranian, walking around. I mean, because that happens apparently, just like buses. For the listeners though, this is challenging. Like if this happened right now, 2023, with the best NVGs that we have, the white phosphorus ones, with PAX manifests, with lists of names of everybody on there, with more powerful aircraft, better technology. This would be an incredible undertaking to actually make, to fix the situation, right? Because there's already a bad situation. So all this kind of stuff, and you guys are still doing this under the cover of darkness with, by today's standards, really, really poor NVGs, no idea how many people there are, less powerful aircraft, and now you guys must have, for lack of better words, overg'd the 130s getting out of there just with so much weight that was on there.
And and then the last thing we had to do is got the word Coach Carney says, don't forget the beanbag lights because they're agency lights. And so I got to bring those back. Okay, Coach.
Yeah, Coach, can we focus up for just a second? Can I get a timeout? Like, we're talking about the beanbag lights. The agency's going to be just fine without their beanbag lights. Can we just leave? Can we just go home? We got beanbag lights at home, Coach.
So, we launched and we dug up the beanbag lights and got them. And
Perfect. Good. At least you got the beanbag lights.
Coach obviously delivered the beanbag lights, and then he ended up getting himself a steak dinner wearing one of the best steakhouses up in D.C. It was all good. So, we covered those. I mean, we lightened, just not us, but, Delta, the load masters, you name it. Anything that we could get off the 130 that wasn't mission essential for flying that bird was left in the desert. And then we started the departure sequence. And like myself, Dick West, and Rex Wallman were on the bird that, if you read in the Guts to Try, I think Coach meant, boom, that jumped the berm out there. There was kind of a berm, on this road, through time, and so, as you said, we stood there, they're running the engines, top max, and then boom. And of course, we're kind of pushing sand. And all of a sudden, we're starting to feel good. And all of a sudden, whoom. And I said, holy shit. And, and of course, Rex and Dick and I, we're sitting there just kind of huddled. And the next thing we get the word is, don't move. Don't do anything. The bird's still trying to get up. But what happened was I think one of the Delta guys admit, something happened with a grenade or, something with an EOD stuff that they couldn't locate. And so all the word, as we're trying to get off the desert floor, they're telling us, don't move. Just sit where you're at. Don't get up. Don't do anything. The other thing you can imagine, we're sitting on this bladder, pretty much empty bladder, but the fumes, you can imagine the fumes inside the 130 was just horrendous. And so the 130 is, continuing to go down the lake bed. And I'm kind of looking at Dick West and, Rex and saying, is this thing going to get up? Are we going to get up? Because it seemed like forever. We were just going after jumping, boom. And then, you could just kind of feel probably the pilot starting to pull the yoke back, and the 130 was just groaning. I call it a groan. I mean, they had everything. They were doing everything they could to, get that at 130. And I'm sure that was the case for all of them that had all the folks. And, my hat goes, I tip my hat to the air crews. They did a hell of a job flying in, flying out. And finally, we lifted up, and it just seemed like forever that took us to gain altitude, but at least we're off the ground.
Yeah, because it's been working out so well on the ground for you up until this point. Why not try something else? Why not spice it up with a little altitude?
But still, with missing explosives and fuel fumes.
This is the craziest thing. And Peaches, you crush it.
The wings could
man.
snap off at any moment.
Yeah, you crush it. Like today, with great weather, with every piece of technological advance that we have, with the best planning, this mission would be a Herculean effort, to say the least. And you guys are making magic out of lunch meat in the middle of a sandstorm with 47 random Iranians. I'm gonna make a band. It's gonna be an emo band, and I'm calling it 47 Iranians. It's gonna be great.
And so we finally left up. We gained altitude, and like I mentioned, the fumes and what the loadmasters did, start popping the hatches. The hatches up above the 130 where you'd crawl out, to just help get the fumes out. And finally, we get back to Masura. We offload. It's a bit, for lack of term, chaotic because we're still going through DACO procedures, and I didn't know how many air crew had been lost and we left in the desert, and so everybody's counting heads, figuring, and then we're offloading the radio operator who had been severely burned. And I think there was a couple other Delta guys that got slightly burned as they were exiting, if I recall correctly. Don't hold me to that. And they had the 141s waiting for Delta, and obviously the injured. And so as Delta did their DACO, they pretty much transloaded from the 130s, pretty much, I think, onto the 141s, if I recall correctly. And once they launched, and then we're left there with the 130 and the maintenance crews. And I can't recall. We were there for a couple more days before we actually got our ride home. It's also the time there that the Brits, because the base we were operating out, the Brits, pretty much ran. And that's when, that's where the title of Colonel Kyle's book, Guts to Try, the Brits brought over a couple of cases of beer written on a piece of cardboard, thanks for having the guts to try. And that.
Man, that's respect right there. That's the kids would say, Chief Lampe, that real recognize real, and that's one of those moments where, they had to be in awe. Like, just listen to the story. I don't know how I would do that. I don't know how I would, do that sort of thing. So that's a fantastic piece of history that I don't think people were connecting. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. So eventually, we got home, got back to Charleston.
And the first words your wife was like, "How was that dive trip? How was Key Largo?"
Now this is the other interesting part of the story. Dick West. Now, obviously, he told Kuma, which is his wife's name, that he's going on a dive trip, just like I told Three. Hey, we're going down, getting a little sun, blow a little bubbles, but he'd written the letter and left the letter for her, because he obviously kind of realized that, we're out on the ragged edge. So he wrote a letter and thanked her. And so she kind of had a heads up. But once the incident took place, Pete Holt, who was back at Charleston, he drives over to my house, I think Bill Sink's house, JK's house. We all lived on Charleston at the time. And he's knocking on the door there. I think we lived at 1300 Hitchcock Lane or whatever there at Charleston. And this is like, I don't know, 6 a.m. Teresa's up, got the 2-year-old Trace, and then Travis, who had been born Christmas Day, just when we got back from one of the rehearsals, where she's feeding him, and she's looking at Pete Holt, and Pete say, he's okay. There's nothing to worry about. They're all right. And she's looking at him. She's, what are you talking about? He's in key lock.
Oh my God.
The alcohol poisoning incident, or what happened?
I don't know. Kidding. Come on, my dude. You're just snitching for no good reason. You're supposed to be a special operator. Keep it tight. Tighten it up.
And so the next thing I guess Teresa knows, and Bill Sink's wife shows up, Kuma West shows up, and Pete saying, you're not watching the news? I got 2 damn kids to take care of. I'm task saturated. CNN? You kidding me? So they turn on the news, and then of course it's all over the news. And I don't know, it was 12 hours, 18 hours later, I show up home, just look, dust, dirt, grime, and Teresa's like, Key Largo, huh?
They're always smarter than us.
Yes, they are.
They're always smarter than us, you idiot.
And so we get back, and we're cleaning up, and then Coach Carney gets a call, and he launches up to camp. I can't remember the name of the camp. The agency uses it, still uses it. And he goes up and joins up with a fair amount of the Delta operators, and President Carter comes in. And, Coach would have to tell the story. But, President Carter makes the rounds, thanks to, everybody that's there, shakes their hand, boom. And then, Coach comes back, gets back, and we're immediately getting ready to start practicing the second iteration. It's called, what was the name of this honey badger? So, I mean, we hadn't had much time back on the ground. It may have been more than it seems, but it was just like lickety split. Next thing I know, I'm out in White Sands, New Mexico, attached to Charlie Company, Captain Grange, the Rangers, and, along with a lot of other, the guys, John Corin, Dick West, Johnny Pantages, but, and we brought up some guys from Hurlburt to, start rehearsing the next evolution. And that went on for, some time until they, kind of put a stop to thing. During this time frame, they held the Hallway Commission. And if you gentlemen recall or read the history, the Hallway Commission looked in to what the hell went wrong. And, and the findings of the Hallway Commission, made, certain recommendations. And Coach Carney and Mitch Bryan went up and testified, at the Hallway Commission. Hallway Commission made their decisions. What came out of that, to just get cut to the chase, was the formation of JSOC. That they determined, you had to have a joint command that, worked together, trained together, we're actually a team versus how we came together to do, Eagle Claw.
And then this is where, just for the listeners out there as well, like this is where the soft truths came from, everybody. So you cannot mass produce special operations forces. Special operations forces require lots of dedicated support in order for them to work. You cannot make a special operations force after an event. That's what came out of the Holloway Commission is really, we started talking about the soft truths and having unity of command and having JSOC and having these units. So for those that want to read into the history, and I urge you to do so, go look at the Holloway Commission. You can read their report. It comes up on whatever search engine you want to use. And you can look. There's been a lot of papers on it. Special Operations Review Group has a great piece on it. You can go over there and read it. So check it out. Sorry, Chief. I just wanted to put that out there.
This is your podcast, guys. You jump in anytime, guidance.
Not today, it ain't.
We lost this podcast a long time ago. Whenever we have guys like you, JK, Wade NORAD, we're working on Coach Carney right now. Like, it is no longer ours.
Yeah, Coach Carney called me to validate you guys. You know.
Hey, who are these knuckleheads?
Who are these idiots?
Well, he called me. I get some random Tampa number, right? Because I don't have his number, right? I get some random call, and I'm heading out to the range to control some casts, and I'm on a razor, and I could barely hear it. I'm like, who? And he's like, hey, it's Coach Carney. I was like, oh, hey,
I gotta take this.
Yeah,
everybody.
exactly. I was like, and I was total fanboy because like the guy next to me, he's like, what? Who was that? I'm like, dude, that was Coach Carney that just called me, man. Like, he called me.
Yeah. And so he called. He said, hey, Chief. Hey, Mike. Says, you know, some guy named Peach or Peach. You know. I said, yeah. He says, well, you know, podcast, you know, then they got a guy, Aaron, you know, PJ.
Oh, no. I can't. Oh, man. Oh, this is the most anxiety that I've ever had my entire life. Why does Coach Carney know my name? That's not a good thing.
It's never a good thing.
That's never a good thing. Holy crap.
He says, are they for real? You know, I said, yeah, Coach, you know, they're good. They're solid. You know, so I do a podcast. Yeah, Coach, I got a hell of a story. You know, get on there and, you know, just be the coach that we love. And I tell you, Coach Carney is a great guy. He was a great leader, still is. And if you look at, you know, what he did, and we can talk about him, you know, later on, but one for Coach Carney, where we are today in special tactics, we wouldn't be. He was the right guy at the right time. He could walk the talk. He had charisma. He immediately gained respect of the senior officers that we were dealing with. And you got to remember, Coach Carney was a major. And you got all these grumpy, you know, 06, not grumpy, but, you know, I call them
crusty.
But, you know, they didn't take no shit, you know, and, you know, and Coach Carney walked in and he didn't take no shit. You know, even though he was a major, he walked in and he gained their respect very quickly. And I remember something, and I think this was out in Yuma when we were first doing Blivet drops, and Sergeant Charlie Beckworth was out there, and I was earshot of their conversation. And, you know, Beckworth said, you know, I think he said, John, I just don't know what cut of cloth or what boat of cloth your guys are from. And I could see the you know, the coach, but for me, as one of the coaches, you know, guys, or, you know, the guys that got to go out and execute, that was fighting words to me. That was a challenge or a charge for me that, you know, we were going to prove that we're as good as any of the Delta operators or any of the Rangers. We just needed to be given the opportunity. And that's why, I think I mentioned before, we used to tell Coach, just get us on the playing field. Just get us in the game, you know, and we'll do the rest. Trust me, we won't let you down. And the coach did that. And if it wasn't for the coach, you know, for my career, you know, hey, I was heading to Germany. And, you know, the coach stepped in and pulled me into Brand X. And, you know, the rest is history, and we'll talk about that, you know, probably as we continue. with these podcasts. But if it wasn't for Coach doing that, I probably wouldn't have all these opportunities to do what I, got to do, or meet the guys, or, be teammates in a lot of these operations. But back to Coach coming back, we did, all this honey badger, different scenarios. One of the biggest rehearsals on honey badger was a dual runway takedown of Reese Air Force Base, I think it was. And we had tons. I mean, we had 130s up the yin yang, 141s, C5s, and of course the C5s and the 141s obviously are offloading besides the Rangers. You got Blackhawks, you got Little Birds. It was like, for lack of term, Atlanta International Airport. You just had Little Birds flying this way, Blackhawks going this way, 130s landing here, 140s landing here. And it, you talk about a hell of an airfield, air operation that, we pulled off. The air crew, obviously, everybody. But we really showed what we were capable of in that reference, having all that many aircraft going all kinds of different, et cetera. It was quite the success, and I think it was tied to that they were looking at one of the options of seizing, Tehran International Airport. Not necessarily, ideal,
Yes.
but that was one of the options to, if we're going to go back in and try to, rescue the hostages or locate, etc. Eventually that came, started to taper down. Obviously, elections had taken place. Reagan had been elected as a president. All those things were taking place. You can read that in the history book. And then Coach Carney got called up to Washington, D.C., and then I think the headquarters MAC. And this had to be, I want to say September 80. Again, don't hold me to this. And he comes back and he pulls, the guys together. Now, Mitch Bryan, JK, and Bud had already left. They had applied for officer training candidate school and been selected. So those three had left. They were, part of the core Brand X. But what was left is, Pete Holt and Davey Wilson, myself, Dick West, Johnny Pantages had come in, I think, from 22nd Air Force. We also picked up Nick Corrali, Chief Corrali, out of 7th SOS, Rick Cafe, Doug Phillips was there, Doug Coheet, I think was in that group. And then Coach, pulls us all together and says, well, I got some good news and I got some bad news.
This is never good. It's always bad news. It's always, I got some bad news and I got some worse news is usually how that should go.
And so, we're all kind of sitting there or standing there looking at the coach. Okay, Coach, let's go. We're ready. We're big boys. We got thick skin. And he said, well, the good news is we're going to form our own unit. It's going to be separate from any combat control, team stateside or your, overseas. It's not going to be part of any numbered Air Force per se. And I'll be working, pretty much directly, for a 2-star general. And not that his performance report wouldn't be written by, an Air Force, colonel or above, because he's still a major.
So, Chief, I just want to ask, were there rumors that this was coming down the pike? Because you guys were involved in the congressional hearings. You guys were obviously plugged in. Was the word in the team room kind of like, hey, it's moving towards this thing, we might have our own force, or did this come as a surprise?
It came as a surprise to us. Coach,
wow.
Coach
Okay.
made boom, but he didn't Coach kind of holds his cards close until actually everything has solidified. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Boom. So he may have been much more aware of it, but all of us, we're scattered to the four winds and doing what we had to do. So it was
going on those extra dive trips y'all love so much.
Largo, the pina coladas, you got it.
Pina colada, I got it. Yeah, not a lot has changed. We drink margaritas these days, but dive trips pretty standard.
And so okay, and he says that's the good news. And I said, and I popped up and I said, well, Coach, what about the bad news? Well, the unit's going to be stood up at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Vietnam. And, not necessarily, it's not Charleston, South Carolina. It's not Charleston Air Force Base, but that's where we need to be. If we're going to be part of the MISH, we need to be co-located with the command, but, with Delta. He said, I'll let you guys think about it and see who'd like to, make that move. Because
Fayetteville's kind of nice, right? Almost like Charleston.
Trenton, stop it. Listen, I knew you were going to do it, and that is enough. We all know that joint is spelled ARMY, and that's the only reason that they had to go to Fort Bragg. Now, you stop it. It is not as nice as Charleston. Sorry, Chief, I got Trent. I'm sorry for letting him interrupt.
So out of that group, obviously, Chief Corrali said he would go. Rick Caffey wasn't necessarily a happy camper. He'd left Europe to come to Charleston to be part of, for lack of term. But, Rick said, okay, I'll go. Dick West, Johnny Pantages said they'd go. And, I said I'd go.
John Pagini was in this mix too as well. PJ, John Pagini was there at the beginning.
He came after Grenada. Now, we'll get to
okay.
He came in 84. This is because we didn't have any PJs at that time. But John Pagini was very helpful to us, and it's another when we got settled. And this is kind of just a sideline. And when we were doing, so much airfield seizures, we're dealing with a lot of injuries, and John Pagini was up at MAC staff or 23rd staff as the senior PJ. And I think it was Rick Caffey that, when we got settled, worked with John to get us slots to the medical piece of the pararescue training. And so we sent, I think, six or eight guys, John McReynolds, Jerry Bennett, Greg Capps, Rick Caffey, D.I. Brown, John Bringoff, that I recall that we all sent out, boom. And so as we developed, each of those guys that carried a real small medical kit, which really came in handy in Grenada because the Rangers, medical team was pretty much overwhelmed with that. But that's I'm ahead of myself in that. So, so that was the initial crew that left out of Charleston. Now, Doug Coheet and Doug Phillips also were volunteers to go up there. But, assignment-wise or, the bureaucracy. Also, Jeff Buckmelter, Lieutenant Buckmelter. And we had Lieutenant Bob Steffen. And Coach wanted to bring Jeff Buckmelter, but General Cassidy said Jeff was still too young as a young officer, even though he had been enlisted combat controller PO304. General Cassidy just felt that Coach needed to take a more senior officer with him to be his deputy. And Coach chose Craig Brochie out of the McCord team to be his second officer. an interesting sidelight to Jeff Buckmelter. I met Jeff Buckmelter when he was, I guess we were both E4s together. And I'd come back from Laos in January 73, and we had that jump fest that was going on, POW MIA jump fest, I think April, May. And that's when I first met Jeff. Of course, they didn't have rent-a-cars back then, so I ended up, driving Jeff and a guy named Stu Pressey that ended up being assigned over in Thailand with us. And that's the first time, I met Jeff, and we hit it off. He's a solid man, damn good. He was a solid operator and really was a hell of a damn good officer. And as you probably know, he's now the Deputy J3 at USSOCOM and has been there for some time. And I think he's getting ready to start on his 14th J3. And he's a hell of an anchor point within USSOCOM. But another sidelight on that, and I know, kind of wandering a little bit, but, I was driving, Jeff and Stu Pressey around in a car I bought from Wayne Norad, a 1970 AMX, muscle car. And,
Nice.
there was no back seats, so, Jeff and Stu are flipping who's going to go lay in the back where there is no back seat, and that car, and sidelight, and you guys interviewed Wayne, but Wayne had that car at Keesler, and of course we went to air traffic control school together. He was a few classes ahead, just like jump school, and we ended up linking up there. We played on the flag football team together, but when Gail, his wife, was pregnant with her third son, he said, and Wayne was our transportation, at Keesler. We're going to have both, and he said, well, I got to get a different car with a back seat, et cetera. And so, I liked Wayne's car, and I said, how much? $1,500. So, I've been saving. I didn't put my money in the credit union. So, I had my little sock. So, pulled out. Boom, boom. Yeah, sock
Money.
You got that. That's what they call a little walking around money. I'll see myself out.
I paid Wayne $1,500, and changed the transfer and title, and and I let him use it until he left, and so he's packing out at Keesler. Like I said, he was a few weeks ahead of me, and so he's digging through his drawers, and he throws this old pair of socks in the trash can. Boom! I said, "What the hell was that?" And so I go over and, pull out this sock he just threw in the trash can. And I open it up. It's the $1,500 I gave him for the car. And I said, Wayne, you want this sock? Nah, it's a piece of shit. Boom. I said, you want to look at it again?
You're a better friend than I am. I would have kept that money.
I said, Wayne.
I would have said a thing. I'd have been like, man, I can't believe you threw away this sock.
And I still laugh about it. Now, the ironic thing is, guys, I still have that car. Yeah.
No way.
1970 AMX. They only made like 20,000 of those. Still runs great. Still goes like a bat out of hell. And it's worth a lot more than $1,500 today.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we call an investment. Now, this is a cautionary tale to everybody out there, because right now there's a bunch of people listening that are going, oh, wait, so you mean I can buy that Dodge Charger muscle car for 29% interest and it's going to be worth something later in life? Guys, Chief Lampe's experience, your experience may vary. Okay. So let's just mucho take it easy. Let's figure out how it is that we can have some better investments. Chief Lampe won. You probably are not going to win with your Dodge Charger muscle car.
So kind of an ironic thing, that I kept it for so long, that Wayne was throwing the money away that I'd given him. But again, sorry I got off on a tangent. But it just kind of popped up in my head when we were talking about Wayne and Jeff Buckmelter. And then when, Jeff showed up as a Butterball lieutenant at Charleston, it was great to see him. And then later on, he came up to Det 1 Makos, and I ended up being his senior NCO. And he was the, officer charge. And then Wayne came in the tail end of the original 16, and so Craig Brochi. So we had two teams at that time. And how long have we been going here?
Feels like a couple seconds.
We are at 1 hour and 12 minutes.
I hate to break it off, but I've got another commitment here that I got to get going.
What a power move. What a power move. Chief Lampe comes on.
I told you, this is your podcast.
Yep. So, nice. So hopefully I covered, enough, but we'll talk about the formation of Det 1 Makos next time. Kind of what we went through, the life in the trailer, acquiring most of our furniture and vehicles through DMRO.
Acquiring.
Yeah.
Classic ST move. I guess nobody's if somebody is not protecting it, that is open. That is open game. Yeah. Hey, boy, that couch sure does look nice.
Yeah, it served well. And Steve Corrali did a hell of a job acquiring stuff at DMRO, because we really didn't have a budget at that time. We were a unit, yes, Det 1 Makos, and Coach Carney and Chief Corrali were the first two to go up, and Chief Corrali had the heavy lifting, getting the trailer, the first trailer, getting the furniture, acquire vehicle transportation for us, 2 6-packs, beating up 6-packs out of DMRO, but they ran, they got us from point A to point B. And the other thing is he did is, the first manpower document for, we had 5 support people, which was, phenomenal. This is like a kid in the candy store, because, back in our day, we didn't have any support people. We packed our own parachutes, we maintained our own radios, everything we did. You may have had an admin clerk, and if you're lucky, you might have had a training person to help out. Boom. But he got admin guy John Rivers, supply person was first name was Brenda, don't recall her last name. The maintenance shop, we got 2 maintenance guys, Don Whitman and a guy named Chuck Freeman, who was actually a combat controller at Charleston in the maintenance shop, but volunteered to come up to be the second 304. And then we picked up a guy, Steve Miller, that was a parachute rigger down at Pope. And that was our 5 support folks that helped stand up the unit. Okay, gentlemen.
Well, Chief, I think that proves right there how important support is to the SOF mission. But I know you got to bounce, Chief.
Go ahead.
So I'll coordinate with you and get part 4 scheduled. But we definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Chief.
I can't speak enough reference the support folks, because they really became a godsend.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they
still are.
And
Facts.
I named them. I think had a guy named Rick Rouse that ran the maintenance shop. Came up. Called them combat generators. As the unit. And I think the thing that really hit home to me, and again I'm ahead of myself, was the jump into Grenada. And as you're probably aware of, it was a 500-foot jump into Grenada. And Colonel Taylor was, I was assigned to the first 75th BAT for that jump. And, Colonel Taylor had decided that really didn't need reserves. 500 feet. You guys know that. I'm preaching to the choir. It takes about 200 feet for your parachute to elongate and open up. And if you're lucky, you got a good, stable exit and you're not spun up to the risers up to your neck. And so by the time you open up and, we're jumping T10, so you don't really have much, if any, steerability. And so if you're lucky, you get maybe 2, maybe 3 oscillations underneath your parachute. And if you're lucky, you get your rucksack released before you become part of Mother Earth. And as we're coming in, and this, we'll talk about Grenada, but I think I was the number 2 or number 3 guy in the door. And of course, the AAA sites that they had set up were high enough that they couldn't lower to where the C-130, so you could see the tracer rounds out the door coming over the top. And so we're going through, the 10-minute, 6-minute, 1 minute, check your equipment, boom. And the next thing I know, I'm checking my equipment, but I don't have a reserve. And you want to talk shock and awe, for lack of a term, all of a sudden you didn't think about it when you're suiting up and whatever, but now you're getting ready to jump out of an airplane and something that you're so used to having in front of you, you don't have. And so I always used to say a prayer, but this time I modified my prayer. I said, Lord, I sure hope that the rigger, he or she that packed this parachute, my main parachute, followed the TO to the nth degree, and it opens as prescribed or whatever I said. And that's talk about really counting on someone that you never know, you never meet, but you're depending on what they did for you to press on and do your mission. And I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yep.
Chief, thanks again for your time.
Thanks, Chief.
Everybody out there, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Next time.
Later.
Guys, take care and have a great April Fool's Day, huh?
Thank you.
Yeah,
You too, Chief.